Hi, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. Today, we're welcoming Coco Brown. Coco Brown is a multi-time entrepreneur and multi-time CEO, and currently is the CEO of Athena Alliance. Welcome to the podcast, Coco.
Thank you.
I'm excited to have you on to this series, which we're talking about the power of coaching. We've had a lot of amazing conversations with product leadership coaches. And when the opportunity came to speak with you as the CEO of Athena Alliance, a light bulb went off, right? This is an opportunity to speak with somebody who's talking to leaders at the C-suite and focusing on supporting women in that role, either getting to that role or thriving and succeeding in that role. And that includes, of course, women in product, hence the partnership with Women in Product that we do have, in addition to women across a number of other functions. And I guess to help our listeners get to know you a little bit better and understand your mission, maybe you can share a little bit about your journey and path towards that current role.
Sure. Okay. Well, let's see. I've been in Silicon Valley now for 32 years. I moved out maybe a year after I graduated from college, and I've spent my entire career out here in the tech world. I spent the first 9 years in actually more on the HR side, doing compensation analysis and design, and also working across the business in leadership training, which was a lot of fun. I then pivoted into consulting and ran a community of consultants in the San Francisco Bay Area for a company called Taos. And then I quickly moved through the ranks and ended up the vice president of professional services for the company. We had a skyrocketing time in the late 90s and then crashed in the early 2000s. And I became the third owner of the business and the president and COO of the company, the one report to the CEO, and grew the business back up to a pretty notable size and readied it for acquisition by private equity and then eventually by IBM. And that company was in the IT infrastructure space. And so we did anything that happened under in the realm of infrastructure and IT. So network servers, databases, et cetera, et cetera. I'm a multi-time entrepreneur in that somewhere in the middle of my 20s, I actually built a product in the HR space, tried to get it funded, ended up selling it to a company in the early days of the HRIS space, and kind of sold my product and walked away. It was a great outcome for a 26-year-old, I suppose, but it wasn't for an entrepreneur. And then I've also started my recent endeavor, which is Athena Alliance. We started as a nonprofit organization with a single focus on getting women onto corporate boards. And then 4.5 years ago, started a commercial company that is focused on a wider purview of getting women into the C-suite, onto boards, and into their second half careers as well. So kind of a variety of different approaches. We also work with corporations directly, and in that sense, help all genders to advance to the C-suite.
That's amazing. I have to ask, because I'm a fan of Greek mythology, the choice for Athena as part of the branding, I imagine that was intentional. Can you share maybe what your thought process was around that name for your company?
Yeah, so many elements. I mean, Athena is the goddess of strategy. Her animal is the owl, so wisdom, knowledge. She's also the arts and creativity. People know of her as the goddess of war, but it's more about striving for right, for right and fairness, and also being very strategical and in that approach. So she's the goddess for everyone, really, and covers a lot of ground. But what we most liked about her is how smart she is. How much she really focuses on she's also family, but how much she focuses on sort of the interconnectivity of things and the strategy behind things and the wisdom that drives forward the world.
Wow. I think it's the first time I've really thought about that. And of course, been thinking about Athena Alliance for a while now, but it just brings a whole new dimension to that historical, not historical, the recent lingo around the war room, right? Or war
Yeah.
development and all of these, what we'll say maybe are highly masculine energy terms in leadership and in tech leadership. And then just layering in that female power and the goddess power and the wisdom and everything. So it's a reframe for me. I'll be noodling on that one, but it's really a beautiful name. Um,
Yeah.
I think another thing you mentioned is that during that original experience with Taos, you were there in a time of conflict, right? Like during this period of the original dot-com bust, the journey through that. And we're in not a dissimilar moment now in terms of the macroeconomic climate. And of course, there's some amazing advancements, but there's a lot of just turmoil right now in this space. Do you have any thoughts on like for leaders right now? What are like the leadership traits or qualities that help people through, like help leaders thrive in the hard times versus in the boom times?
Yeah. I mean, the hard times are really where you're tested as to whether or not you're a good company, a good leader, viable and on all sorts of fronts. So, I mean, I think one of the things that is really vital in the era leading up to the dot-com boom, it was, there was very little other than just excitement and growth. People who came into the work world in the late 90s, most of our workforce were in their mid 20s. And, all this, 700 people out there in our customer environments and seeing kind of crazy valuations of companies and just thinking that the world was like their oyster and would continue to be forever and ever, had a pretty narrow mindset about, the volatility of their own career, the volatility of their own value, the volatility of these, crazy idea.com businesses that they had, and whether they would have any value in any kind of an unstable time. And so having gone through the dot-com bust, but then also the great recession of 2008, when Lehman Brothers crashed and the housing market and all of that. I mean, I've been through in those two big eras significant downturns and had to pull the phoenix from the ashes. In the first case, we had crashed from 100 million to 10 million in revenue, and I had to grow that back up. And then in the next recession, learned so much from that I was able to keep us steady. We were flat, but we really didn't decline. So I would say, resiliency as a leader is about being able to sort of multi-scenario play. Think about, gosh, that didn't work. I was so single-threaded that was very, very fragile. That business that only did one thing, that was so fragile. In anticipation of the next fragile moment, because there will be another one, how do I diversify my business and sort of account for the things that happen during down cycles, so that my business survives during down cycles and not just up cycles? And is that kind of thinking that is, business savvy. When people talk about being business savvy or a strategic leader, that's right. What we mean, right?
Wow. And in those times, I imagine it's easy to become insular or just focus within yourself, maybe your team. Would you, and it sounds like you had your own growth and learning journey from having been through two of those and learned lessons through the first. What would you advise people to do today? Right. I think, of course, we have this full podcast. We're doing round coaching. So I don't know if that's a component of the answer or not, but it feels like more cross-pollination of ideas and dialogue and openness around strategy. Is that something that you're seeing do today?
Absolutely. I mean, Athena exists to solve problems I had in my late 20s and early 30s when I couldn't when I had nobody to turn to. And also being a young woman who is non-technical, it was very hard to turn to people in a very deeply technical business and say, I need guidance and support and help here. And it takes all sorts of different forms. When I had to keep Taos from bankruptcy, I didn't even know the difference between Chapter 7 and Chapter 11. So, part of that is, it's not coaching, it's educating yourself, but who do you educate yourself from? In that case, I brought in a bunch of lawyers and interviewed them all until I figured out how not to hire them. But you in Athena, the way we think about it is, you need the ability to have right time conversations with your peers. Mm-hmm. So who's been through this before? Who also is dealing with tariff issues? Who also is dealing with, supply chain challenges in the Middle East? Who also is or has already, pivoted their product from, one line that one vertical to another vertical, or made hard decisions in the product space to sunset something that was the cash cow in the interest of a new one. And who's done this, right? Like, that question is one that we answer within the context of Athena by pairing our members to other members for right time conversations. And then when we think about coaches, there's kind of two frames. One is the coach, who's kind of more of the very experienced person in a thematic area, like, let's say, negotiating, or presentation skills, or whereas for us, we really focus on expert strategists, like people who've been in the trenches but also have that capability. So, or a pairing of those two. So who's going to help me figure out what my unique value proposition is, or how I tackle this very difficult meeting that I'm going to be coming into, or prepare for a stage I've never been on before. And then who other is perhaps going to give me the actual skills and kind of coach me through and leveraging those skills, like the tactics of negotiation, and then role playing and practicing those. So I kind of think about people a little bit on a continuum from like coach to expert strategist.
So then, you have a real front row seat to all of these moments that leaders go through, right? Like how they come to a realization there's an opportunity for them to grow. And when do you think you've seen coaching really unlock something meaningful, maybe with either one of those contexts? I don't know if you have any stories from the field that you can share that capture the spirit of that.
Yeah, I mean, so at Athena, we are constantly doing, one-on-one or group learning together. And some of that is taking the form of coaching, and in fact, from coaches. And the best unlocks come from from when you actually apply the skill set a coach brings to a specific scenario you have. Like, if you think about athletes, they've got a specific goal. I want to, run this race, and usually it's kind of tiered, maybe they'll say, ultimately, I want to be at the Olympic level, but you kind of go through tiers to get there. And so they've got these specific sort of lines on the horizon that they have to reach before they can define the next one and the next one. But also then they have the things within those that, it's this race next month, and it's on this course, and it's got, this kind of grade, and, like it's this kind of difficulty, etc. And a lot of the coaching is around, okay, well, what does it take, to sustain that sort of grade climb, or, what does it take to sustain that level of consistency in your pace and that sort of heat. So coaching is really around um, the nuances of getting through to win the game, the football game, whatever it is, right? That's sort of where the coaching component comes from. And so I think of it as kind of essential. You know, this blend that I have on this continuum of coach to expert strategist. An expert strategist in our vernacular is oftentimes somebody who can help you lay out the whole thing. Like, I'm going from here to here. And then, the coach is helping you deal with specific scenarios within that. And so, for example, I'll give you an example of my own. I've been on so many stages. I'm completely comfortable on stage. It doesn't matter if it's 3,000 people or 30,000 people or 2 people. Like, I don't have stage fright, and I love being on stage. And there was this one time though that I was going to be in a room of about 15 CEOs at the head of the board table, facilitating a conversation around boardroom, sort of building the modern boardroom. And I learned that just a couple of days before, that the CEOs that were going to be in that conversation were the CEOs of Netflix and Merck and Wells Fargo. And like, these are the top CEOs of the world, right? So I called a coach. She calls herself a coach, but I, in her case, would call her an expert strategist, or, kind of really, she has stood behind the red dot for many people and doing TED Talks and helped them strategize to get to the ability to do a TED Talk. But I called her for coaching in that moment. And I said, okay, I'm going to be in this room with these people. And she sort of walked me through the reminder, you know this, Coco, you know that, you remember this. And then a little bit of aha of, oh yeah, that's right. I'd never heard of it that way. One person, 1 point, one person, 1 point. That's so, I mean, that's an example, but I use coaching, whether it's ad hoc and just, people I know who can coach me, or formal, on a regular basis.
Do you see women coming into your orbit through Athena or elsewhere that really never had coaches before, that are kind of just having this awareness of, oh, wait, this is a this is a tool in the toolbox that I can use and I never really knew? I mean, I feel like, if I think about my own career, so much of it felt like I have to show what I can do and grow on my own 2 feet. And it felt very like isolating. And I think it took me a little while before I got into some more leadership positions where I just realized the power of that coaching. And I'm just curious if you're seeing women that come in, are more women just generally like, yeah, I get it, and this is the way to go? Or are there people that are just kind of on the beginning of that, how to integrate coaching as a tool in their professional journey?
Yeah, I think a lot of women hesitate to engage coaching. I think women historically and as a unit are less inclined to invest in themselves in that way, where our male counterparts on a whole have been in the leadership realm for longer and in a broader sense, and are used to just writing a check for coaching and for participation in this group and that group, and to being able to be a part of peer exchanges that you have to pay for and things like that. That's so much more common practice in the male ecosystem than the female ecosystem. And part of it is because we don't see enough of each other around to say, hey, by the way, this is my secret sauce, and trade our coaches or our communities like Athena to each other and say, this is game changing. You got to pay for that and be a part of it. So women don't invest in themselves, and they also historically haven't known to do that, and it hasn't come as easily. And we're always thinking about other checks we have to write, whether it's the summer camp or the pill, or so there's not as much of a muscle for that. But it is career care, and this is a fundamental statement that Athena makes all the time. You invest in healthcare, you invest in mental care, you invest in physical care, you have to invest in career care. And career care is being in the right communities for peer exchanges, but also hiring the right experts for the moments that you need expertise to guide you or work with you.
That's a quotable moment. I mean, it's such a great point, and uh, hopefully an unlock for some of our listeners. So you work with women in Athena Alliance that are primarily at the C-suite level across multiple functions. Is that correct, or VP, or what's the?
Well, there's sort of three ways to. So there's three ICPs, ideal customer profiles. One is the woman on a vertical climb from senior director to board director. So in the corporate structure or even government or military, there's a vertical climb. And that vertical climb we support from senior director through the C-suite and into board director. That's so one ICP there is, we call her the ambitious climber. She's somewhere in that realm of senior director to C-suite. So she's going from senior director to VP, or VP to C-suite, or SVP, or et cetera. And we're supporting her going through that process. The next ICP is the person who, is kind of the horizontal explorer. She's probably done or close to done with this vertical experience. And now she's thinking about a portfolio and into her second half of her career. And that usually starts with exploring board work, but then becomes like, oh, I could also do consulting and teach the local university and write a book and start a podcast. And like, I think of myself more as a portfolio. So that's the second one. And then the third is really the portfolio master. She's topping things off. She's got several boards and she's looking for another one, or she's, written a number of books and she's looking to kind of be in a community that will help her engage in the expertise that she's shaping. But she's kind of climbed all her mountains and she's topping things off and sending the elevator back down. That's
a beautiful portrait to paint of these different paths, and hopefully, I mean, it's inspiring for me to hear you to lay those paths out, so that it's really helpful. And as you think about these verticals, then, so you're working with women across multiple verticals, as we discussed. When you're looking and working with product leaders, is there anything that you've observed that is distinctive or interesting in terms of what they're bringing to the community at Athena Alliance, and maybe any blind spots that people in product tend to have, or superpowers that you're seeing them have? Our audience is a product leader. Yeah. And so just be great to hear if you've seen any patterns, or anecdotes even.
Yeah, no, well, we have a partnership with women in product, and through that partnership, which we call Executive Edge, we work with a lot of product leaders, and our goal combined is to create more chief product officers that are women. And so I would say a couple of my observations. The opportunity that exists there is that the product leader has a very unique and privileged place in the organization. The product leader has a great opportunity to engage with marketing and finance and engineering. And so that product leader is in a position to, if they're really business savvy and they attend to the business of the business, do they understand the overall financials of the business, and what are the levers and the key metrics that drive the business and that are at risk or doing really well within the business, and how do those key levers play into the kinds of decisions that happen on the product side, or the kinds of things that need to change on the product side. Similarly, working with market and understanding what is going on from the market perspective also informs how they work with, the roadmap and where the priorities are set, and et cetera. But if they can take a business view of their role, they have the opportunity to take on more roles. It's not unlike something I've seen in the HR world, where some of the best HR leaders, and the ones who end up on boards as well, position themselves to not just take on people, but then they end up taking on people in places, so now they have the whole facilities thing. And then oftentimes you'll see, not oftentimes, but sometimes you'll also see those same incredible HR leaders take on IT. And so now you've got these HR leaders who are more in this sort of pseudo COO role, if you will, and ultimately COO. And in product, you can see, the opportunity for those product leaders to potentially take on other pieces of the business. The former CEO of Intercom, Karen Peacock, that's essentially what she did. She moved from product into marketing, and her friends were all like, "Why are you doing this? Is this a crazy move? You're going laterally or down even, And she said, because I want to understand this whole other part of the business, and that's going to make me go further than you." Right? I don't know if those would be her words, but that's what happened. And she became the CEO of Intercom, right? So I think chief product officers have a huge opportunity to gain a lot more in the business than they are setting their sights on. So I would say that's both a plus and a minus. I would like to see them set bigger sights for themselves, and see that as an opportunity space.
What a powerful story with that intercom story. And then that begs the question, because you did mention the vertical versus horizontal. What are the vertical moves that you're seeing product leaders explore to diversify their skill set and ultimately give them a stronger foundation for even further advancing their leadership?
I think it's not that there's a path. I have this interview series where I interview prominent CEOs, and Karen Peacock was one of them. Those CEOs explored multiple paths. So what I would say is, from where you are in the organization, what paths can you explore? So, for example, anyone who is a part of massive transformation in the business, let's say, we're talking about AI these days, or globalization and supply chain, or, big M&A going on. If the product leader can get involved in these big initiatives of the business beyond just like product, right, and be really part of bigger initiatives, they will be seen at the board level. If they spend more time, collaborating across the leadership with the players that do touch what they're doing today, finance or marketing, etc., and they see opportunities to go take, an incredible overseas assignment and run an entire division for it. Like, what I'm saying is they're exploring the world outside their world. Not necessarily that there's a specific one, although it might be that going from product to marketing is, maybe a logical place. If you're a particularly, if you come from a very strong technical background, maybe you could take on parts of engineering, or maybe there's a way of going into customer success, because, the NPS scores and all of the sort of things that touch on that, and what is retention and adoption and retention and expansion. If you can parlay all your experience in product ownership and design and all of that into that role, then, move in the organization is what I'm saying. Experience different parts of the org, particularly if you want to potentially become a CEO or a board member.
That's really powerful. I feel like if I'm trying to think of examples that I've seen, it's definitely marketing is one. And a lot of people in product have product marketing experience. And of course, market research and finding product market fit is a big component of innovation. And so I feel like marketing is one. I love the customer success example. I've heard of companies where I think even on Lenny's podcast, I'm not going to remember the company specifically, but product owned CS, because they basically said, we're a SaaS platform. And so I want to have a great CS program, but I want PMs to be so tied into what's happening that any CS inquiry basically is like a bug. And so we can make the customer experience magical if that's more tightly integrated organizationally than it has been at any other company. And one does that by aligning it under leadership, I think. And then the other one is the rise of the CPTO, right? We're seeing definitely more chief product and technology officers, and even the idea that you need to have an engineering background in order to lead a technical team, I think, is one that has been under scrutiny or exploration for a while. And there's a lot of very successful product leaders that have taken that technology organization under their wing as well. So
I mean, I'm an example of that myself. I was a psych major in college, and I ended up running a deeply technical IT infrastructure, managed services, and consulting company. I mean, yeah. So all three of those domains, marketing, customer success, and CPTO, I think is great pathways for product leaders.
Okay, great. And so my last question for you, Coco, would be, you've seen executive teams level up as a team. And my question is, what have you seen coaches work with executive teams in order to help them level up? Or, if teams are evolving, not just participants on a team as a whole, what are ways that teams have become more performant and more aligned in their work?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things we have Athena Academy, so the wise owl. And we have an executive excellence course, and we've had a number of customers. Proofpoint is an example that in the case of Proofpoint, they bought a private run of our executive excellence course for 25 of their leaders. All 25 of those people are going through the same learning experience together. And a number of the people who are delivering the content that we have, and the content that we have within that is designed and developed by people you would call coaches. We think of them as expert strategists because they're on that continuum. They've got a lot of many years of experience under their belt, and great expertise in particular areas. And that has been hugely transformative for them, not just as individuals, but then as individuals who are learning together. And then they're, sort of learning together through not just the very actionable concepts that they're taking in, but then the breakouts and how they're being led through working through real-time issues and the office hours and et cetera. Like it's absolutely something that, and in a former life, I suppose, before I started Athena and after I left Taos, I was doing consulting myself. And one of the specialties that I was doing that I absolutely loved was working with CEOs and their executive teams. Usually in the form of, I would build and then run, build, architect, and run their strategic planning sessions, whether it was annual or quarterly, and in some cases quarterly, and I'd come back and I'd do it again next quarter and the next quarter. And through that process, I'm working with the entire executive team to build the strategy, move the strategy forward. And a lot of that is coaching them through, the how to work together.
Are there any patterns in that quote, how to work together, that are more tangible to share that you've seen? Like, quite often it's these two shifts in behavior that unlock more collaboration or unblock blocked thinking. Anything like that?
I mean, one thing that one thing I really work on a lot, and I know that this was, gosh, I'm drawing a blank on her name, but the woman who wrote Radical Candor. But one of the things that I work with my own team on all the time and other teams on is how to, not just give feedback, but call out the central issue, right? And it's not just, it's oftentimes not, we say, well, tackle the problem, not the person, but oftentimes the person is the problem. So we also have to learn how to tackle the person and do so in a way that, oftentimes people can ignore an issue if they think, oh, you're the only person who's ever had that issue with me. But if they see that there's a pattern of people who are like, no, this is real. This is a challenge that you bring us every time. And in terms of how you show up and you do things and and so working through that with teams so that they can go, okay, that is in me. That is what I do. And it's not, it's not productive in these sorts of scenarios, but most of our downfalls are also our greatest strengths. Our Achilles heels are also our greatest strengths. So also acknowledging how that great strength should be leveraged and why you are here because of that great strength. So that sort of duality in working with people to really own the duality is a very important part of getting teams to work well together and individuals to work well together.
That's an amazing answer to that question. The writer is Kim Scott, I believe, right?
Kim Scott.
So we'll absolutely put that as a link in the resources for this. And in those contexts too, I can only imagine for those leaders to have their own executive coaches to have the resilience to accept the feedback and the candor, and then turn that into something that makes them stronger leaders. But I can really see that being a powerful unlock for executive teams. Okay, great. Well, Coco, thank you again so much for spending time with us, sharing your insights and your stories with our product leadership community. And I hope you have a great day.
You too. Thank you. Thanks for having
me. This podcast is an original production of Women in Product. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the Women in Product YouTube channel. Leave us a review so that others can discover us, or share this episode with someone you know. Original music provided by Jimmy Hahn. Thanks for joining.